All right, everyone. HR Heretics episode with Michelle Wagner, our really good friend. Michelle, so happy to have you here today across so many roles, including what I'm a fangirl of and can't wait to talk about is AOL, America Online, to be the head of people, chief people officer across multiple companies, including Evernote, Caffeine, went on to be the CEO, which I'm very excited to dig in today, of MindStrong, and is now advisor, venture, people tech partners, various startups, etc. So we're so happy to get into it with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
So
Sweet.
AOL, okay, so like AOL Instant Messenger, right? Like that stands for America Online. I actually did not know that.
Yeah, before we started taping, I was like, Nolan, we're waiting for Michelle, and I say, it's AOL, you know.
No, you said
Michelle,
America Online. I know AOL.
Michelle was the OG America Online, you know, for 8 years she was there. That was like when I was in college and I'd dial up the internet and you'd hear the whole and then it would go. So
yeah. So that's
incredible.
The same company, right? To where I'm AOL instant messaging my friends, and when my dad like picks up the phone and fucks up the conversation, we're talking about the same company, right?
We are, and you're talking about a feature, not a company, but I'll let that one pass for a second.
And Michelle, you just said recently that they finally have tore down the AOL headquarters. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the only reason I ever get on Facebook is that old crew from AOL from 20 plus years ago. We still connect, mainly to watch headquarters and all of the adjacent buildings of the campus get torn down over the last couple of months, and we're all quite sad. We find old swag and like share it with people. It's the only company where I typically remember the mission statement. How many employees can remember the mission statement of any company they work for? Like, it was that impactful.
I'm such a fangirl of AOL. I really am. I still am. And I know we have very serious topics today. Like, we're going to get very serious and we're all going to learn. But can you just tell us what it was like working there? How did you get there? And what was the culture like? Because I have a feeling in my head it's like Yahoo-esque when it started. And I'm just curious.
So I joined in 1996 when I was in college still, and we were starting one of our 5 call centers in the United States in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we had this big, beautiful glass building. It was not finished. There was plastic for walls, for exterior walls. It was October. It gets cold in October in Albuquerque. And I joined as one of the first employees there to help staff the call center. So we hired about 2,600 people to fill 1,800 seats over the first couple of years. So it was my introduction to the world of HR. I was studying clinical psychology. I thought I wanted to be a therapist. Little did I know I'd end up being a corporate therapist most days, but it was incredible. Like, the energy, the enthusiasm, everything was new. Everything was about innovation. Everything was about taking good care of employees, making mistakes. It is like everything that Silicon Valley says it was founded on was just part of our fabric. But we were an East Coast company. So we had all of that goodness with this intense drive, like just intensity of drive and get stuff done. And we're here for a mission and we have to accomplish it. And I met some of the most amazing people who became long-term friends. Heck, I just spent last weekend with one of my best friends for her 50th birthday, who I met at AOL, and like, just incredible experience. We didn't have dogs in the office, and we bought Netscape. That's what brought AOL to California. AOL bought Netscape. And oh my God, the culture clash of like, why is there a dog in the office? Get back to work. You don't need a ping pong table. Get back to work, you know? But the vibe was drive with care.
Yes.
But mostly drive.
Yes. So funny. I feel like 1996 and now 2026 almost. Now we're back there, right, Nolan? We talk about this. A dog, ping pong table, get back to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Totally. Michelle, we met when you were at Evernote, and I think Evernote, unfortunately, is kind of gone back and forth. Like, I think it was one of the most important companies in Silicon Valley for a long time, and lost its way a little bit. You were running people there. That also, I think, was like at the peak of like when Evernote was really hot. What was that experience like?
Evernote was a really incredible experience. So I joined post Phil Libin, when Chris O'Neill joined as the new CEO. So founder to CEO change out, which is always challenging because something's got to change. That's why there's making a bigger change. And people, this is another product like AOL. People love Evernote. Do not mess with their Evernote. Do not mess with my AOL screen name. All of those things. That's the common thread of the brand awareness and the brand connectivity, which feels really great when you work somewhere where people say, oh, that's cool. I like that company. It makes it a lot easier to hire people. It makes it a lot easier to hang on to people. It does raise the bar a little bit inside. And we went through a lot of change during my time there. Had to do what a lot of companies are doing today. We had to stop burning so much cash. We had to stabilize the organization. We couldn't buy any more Evernote socks. Why did we have Evernote socks? I don't know, but we had Evernote socks. I still have
a
my
pair.
Evernote socks.
Socks are a
have a
thing.
pair.
See, they're I don't know. People loved them. People love that stuff. I mean, we found about $1.2 million in swag inventory that had been purchased to be sold at events at Evernote conferences. We all just kind of looked around what the heck are we going to do with all these socks? But it was the same vibe, Nolan, to your point, that same enthusiasm and care and care for your customer and care for the product and how it turns out. And it's in every function. It's across every bit and corner of the company. And it's pretty incredible whenever you get a chance to work inside that sort of space.
Yeah. And Michelle, you mentioned joining Evernote. Chris just came in, big cultural change. Obviously, you leaned into that. You went in with your eyes open, unless you didn't, which is another conversation. But what drives you to that? Because we'll see this repeated in some of your next roles and MindStrong. What is that with you, and how do you lean into those big challenges and why?
I don't know. It's going to be a therapy session, Kelly.
We'll go back to your training and see what just happened here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. No, I think that I am drawn to chaos. I actually feel very comfortable when things are both unsteady and unclear. It does not shake me at all. I actually appreciate the openness and the ability to get creative in those situations. I am an eternal optimist. It drives people crazy. I as a leader, you have to kind of tamp it down because people want to know that you see the pain in order to believe you when you say, yes, I see the pain and I can see around the corner to something better. But if you just stick to the see around the corner to something better, that you lose trust. But I loved the brand. I loved the product. I'd used Evernote for years. Sure, we need to stabilize the company and turn it profitable and all of these other things. Awesome. Sounds like a great challenge. I don't think I could do a status quo job, like a maintenance job.
Yeah, that speaks deeply to me. And speaking of your career, so you've been an HR leader, basically since you graduated college. Then you ended up at MindStrong, and you went from chief people officer to CEO. I actually don't know of another person who's made that jump. I think you might be an N of one. So tell us about that story and what happened there.
I hope I'm not an N of one whenever we have this conversation in 5 years or 10 years or something. I could not have predicted that that's how my time at MindStrong was going to shake out. I joined as the chief people officer under a new CEO who had joined and raised an enormous amount of money in 2020. Take yourself back to 2020. It's COVID. The world is upside down. MindStrong is a behavioral health company delivering virtual care, clinical virtual care for people with serious mental illness. Talk about a need. And I was drawn to the mission. I knew the founder from years earlier. He's a brilliant guy. I had worked with him and hired him as a head of engineering and product. And so I was drawn to the company for the mission. And then They brought in a new CEO that was a growth CEO. He brought in a growth team. And that was that team's superpower, was growth. Unfortunately, turns out we didn't have product market fit yet. So pretty quickly, it was clear that you had like this very skilled set of people that didn't have the skills for where the company was in that moment. And I had historically been in companies that were making their way through product market fit and then scale. And so the CEO and I had a lot of conversations about this. And unbeknownst to me, lots of other conversations were also happening. And a few months after I joined, I got a call from the board saying, hey, we're going to make some changes. We need you to step in because change is always hard. Everybody knows that you don't do long transitions. You just make the change and like get people facing forward. And to be honest, that night when they called me, I was like, did you dial the right number? Because this is Michelle. I'm not sure. Hey, and they're like, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. And even right now talking about it, like I can feel my heart like fluttering of going, oh my God, if I say no to this, who's going to take care of the patients we have? Who's going to take care of the employees that we have? Who is going to drive this mission forward? Which no matter where we were on kind of that business spectrum of, do you have product market fit? Do you not? We had patients, we had employees, we had 175 employees in the company all across the United States. Like these people deserved to give this a go. There's a lot of money in the bank. It's the middle of COVID. Holy cow. And so with equal parts terror and enthusiasm, forward we marched. And it was December and it was intense. It was an intense few weeks.
Holy shit. So you get this, so you get the call that the board has decided to part ways with the CEO. You are being named interim CEO.
That's right.
And then the ultimate outcome of that company is that you guys shut down, correct? Like that's what happened a couple of years later?
No, last year we sold the company.
Sold. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you were at the helm for all of that.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that experience, right? What was it like being a CEO of a company that was going through that kind of tumultuous change?
It's funny. I was at a dinner last night and I was talking to a CPO about CEO transitions and how challenging they are and how messy they can be. And he was telling me about a CEO transition that he experienced and how smooth it went. And I just encouraged him to write about it because I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from both the good and the challenging ones. I would say the first like month to 2 months was pure chaos. It was change up the leadership team, stabilize employees, make sure our customers were not worried. We did have a few customers. We were onboarding patients. We had a lot of regulatory stuff we had to clean up. There was just a lot of hands-on keyboard work to be done. And when I changed out a bunch of folks on the leadership team, again, no fault of those people, just like wrong skills, wrong place. And that left holes. So then I'm recruiting executives, and trying to hold everything together and trying to not get in everybody's way at the same time. So it was just chaos. We set some pretty clear priorities around doing the right thing for employees. We repriced employee equity straight away, just a straight repricing across the board. Like people have to feel like they're in this for something longer term. We rebuilt our culture, rewrote our values, rewrote our mission statement. All of that happened in the first quarter. Hired a CTO, hired a CPO, like a product. It was just go. It was all about rebuilding internally, stabilize, rebuild. And then probably about halfway through the year, we started going, okay, how are our people doing? Do we have the right people? Are there any other folks that need to come or go? Where do we need to add? How are we taking care of them? And then we're still growing from a patient perspective. Our revenue was growing. We were still putting leads out. We were chasing sales deals. we were kind of everywhere. We looked like a spider, just like there was something happening all over the place. And the first year was, my board was largely like, go figure it out. And that was both a blessing and a curse because I don't come from healthcare. So I had a crazy learning curve. I thankfully had some couple of brilliant people on the board and some awesome people I worked with, like Dr. Holly Dubois, our chief medical officer, like incredible human being to have on my team from that very first day and to stick with me all the way through the end. And then others that we added on, my head of people, AJ Reese, like somebody asked me last night at that same dinner, how did you hire someone for that role? I was like, I got really lucky. I had someone in seat and I got to, some days against her will, yank her into position. And she's brilliant and just the perfect partner for me through all of that chaos. So I got lucky. In a lot of ways, I got really lucky. But the work we did was in every function, every leadership seat. It was working on the leadership team, working on the culture, working on customers, working on patients, working on processes, working on the product itself and rebuilding the product from the ground up, infrastructure up, and getting back to our roots of like using data to actually make better patient care decisions and not just being a pure care delivery company, but also being a technology company at the same time.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Your workforce is both your organization's greatest strength and largest single cost. With Planful, it's easy to unlock the secrets of successful workforce planning so you and your HR team can make the right business decisions. Imagine using data-driven insights to develop accurate forecasts, close hiring gaps, and adjust talent acquisition plans collaboratively based on costs today and into the future. Planful lets you collaborate with colleagues in finance to understand the value your employees bring to the table. And the best part, you can get started with Planful in just weeks with minimal help from IT. Plus, with Planful, you get an endless runway. Planful grows with you, no matter how fast or large your team scales. Ready to transform your HR strategy? Join over 1,500 organizations worldwide who trust Planful as their go-to workforce planning software at planful.com/heretics.
Here's a crazy stat. Between hybrid and frontline employees, about 80% don't typically work in an office. So it's no surprise that digitally engaging employees is the number one concern for CEOs as companies go hybrid. But as hybrid is quickly becoming the norm, it's easy for workplaces to start feeling a little less human. Yet delighting a digital workforce is possible, and it can even be, dare we say, fun. That's where Workvivo, Zoom's employee experience platform, comes in. If you've ever recoiled at the thought of a static intranet that looks like something you built in 1995 using MS Paint, have no fear. Workvivo is a dynamic, intuitive, accessible, and mobile-first tool. People actually like using it, which is why companies like Ryanair, Dollar General, Virgin, and more have rolled it out to hundreds of thousands of employees. Workvivo's activity feeds, spaces, shoutouts, and live streams, among other features, help elevate the employee experience like never before. The result? Dramatically better retention, productivity, and most importantly, connectedness. A greater sense of the belonging we all crave at work, whether we sit at a desk or drive a truck. Make Workvivo the digital heart of your organization and achieve limitless human connection. Head to workvivo.com to book a demo and make sure you tell them that Nolan and Kelli from HR Heretics sent you.
Michelle, in those first 2 weeks or so, how were the dynamics between you and I guess it would be your former peers the night before, right? Now I've got the former chief people officer in this seat and they're changing me out. I mean, how did you navigate that, thread that needle, and frankly press forward when I'm sure you must have gotten, I don't know, maybe an eye roll, like a dismiss it, like this is real. And I just want to unpack that for a few minutes.
In most cases, it was pretty tense. In most cases, it was tense. Either, and keep in mind, all of these folks were hired by the previous CEO, whom they had worked with before, and who they had a lot of loyalty to. So, you'd have to ask them to parse how much of it was Michelle and how much of it was them being angry about him leaving for whatever those circumstances were. They were just unhappy. And I don't fault him for it. I get it, but it was tense between us. A few of them were gone within days. And I mean, you guys have been there as a chief people officer. You have coached CEOs on, if you know it's not the right fit, do what's right for the person, do what's right for the company, respectfully sever ties, take care of them on the way out the door and respectfully sever ties. Do not drag this on because it's no good for anyone. And that's what I did. And that was, to me, that was the only choice. Did it suck? Yeah. It did not feel good to have these people pissed off that I was in the seat. And not all of them were. Some of them tried to stick it out and figure out, like, okay, cool. How do we work together? What could this look like? And some of them were just like, no. And they were just mad, but they weren't going to leave on their own. They were going to make me do it. So, and that's fine. I get it. But it was tough. And the day we announced to the company, I think it was December 17th, if I remember correctly. So you can imagine you're like T-minus 1 week from Christmas. November and December are the hardest months from a behavioral health perspective for people with mental illness. So the teams were busy. We had a lot of cultural reform work to do. And so I think the organization itself had mixed kind of feelings about the change. So it was just uncomfortable.
Wow.
What's so interesting? I would love both of your reactions to this, because we started by saying an N of one, right? Michelle into the CEO role, and it's an N of one. I also haven't heard of CPOs doing that. And then, Michelle, you rattled down a list of all these things you worked on the first quarter. You said, I exited leadership. I hired new leadership. I rewrote the values. I checked on and stabilized the employees and the culture. I mean, if someone asked me to write a job spec of my last 5 gigs, that would be the job. So I'm having a hard time reconciling what I think is a big overlap in work and skill sets and the fact that we haven't seen more CPOs take this job.
Yeah.
I think that's right, especially in loosely defined turnaround situations. Because
Totally.
the first thing you have to do is stabilize inside and outside. You still have to do customer work. We didn't have a go-to-market person. We didn't have someone. So it was like me grabbing Holly, who's a physician, and that's who our customers really want to know everything's okay from. And they had a lot of respect for her, even though she had not been in that role. She had been buried in the organization prior to then. And so it was like Holly and I out with customers. Like, everything's going to be okay. Here's what we're working on. Here's what you can expect from us. Here's our new cadence of communication. All the things that I would do with employees, I also did with customers. Obviously tuned to them. But you're right, Kelly. It is, if you walked in to do a turnaround as a CPO, you would be guiding a CEO and pressuring them to do all the things that I did.
The thing that's missing, though, is given that you come from a people background, you had mentioned the biggest problem in the business is that you didn't have product market fit. And so talk to me a little bit about, okay, I think a chief people officer is uniquely capable at doing all of the people things and getting the culture right and focusing on that aspect. But then there's like this company that's raised tens of millions of dollars to like now turn this thing into a money printer, which is what the investors expect.
Yeah.
And now that's on you.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about, like, one, your self-talk, and then two, how you actually like got to go and do that job.
Yeah. So I'll start with the self-talk, because the number one thing was get out of your people head. Like, get out, just divorce yourself from that. Don't let it influence. And then look at the product that we have, understand the customer's needs deeply, think about how we position it to them. We were a B to B to C play. Let's just complicate things a little bit more. Why don't we?
For sure.
Just for fun. So it was like back to basics and writing up a business strategy. absent from what we were already doing. And then layering in, okay, well, what are we already doing? How much of that should we stick to? I had a number of conversations with our chairman of the board at the time of, I think we could pivot this way. I think we could, like, I still have the slide of these gears of how we invest today to build into this business, to build into this business. People leaders have business acumen. We're just not asked to use it day to day, so it kind of goes dormant. I think if you pull yourself away from people, I learned for myself that, that's interesting. I can dust that off. There's some wisdom in there that I can learn from. So it really was about being really disciplined with myself to set that aside, like put it on a track and set it aside, and then take the time to really dig into it and be vulnerable enough to ask other people lots of questions. How does this work? How does Medicare versus Medicaid versus commercial work from a pricing perspective? How does this work from a contract perspective? Why can't I have a national deal? Why do I have to go state by state with this carrier, but not that one? And just not being afraid to look like an idiot, frankly. The learning curve was steep, like very steep. I had enough experience from my HR world of benefits and how they work to understand commercial very well. But Medicaid and Medicare, that understanding that is just a whole nother beast. And you have to understand the system that you're working inside in order to understand how to build your product inside that system. And so that's what it was, like the largest onion ever. Every time I peel back something, it's like, God, I have to learn more. Like, fuck, I have to learn more and more and more, So I used that first like 2 quarters to try and go really deep with just understanding the history. I spent a lot of time with our founder who had left the business by that point, but, honoring his original concept and idea and really trying to get at what he was trying to do and figure out if it was realistic or not. Some parts not realistic in the slightest. Lord, I wish they were, but, can we decide based on how you're typing to a friend in text whether or not you're suicidal? No, we can't today. Would we love to? Yes. Someday somebody will figure that out. We were not in a position to stay true to that goal. But, and that brought me to, like, how do you build the strategy while you're trying to right the ship, keep it from sinking, get the board bought into a strategy. And they were interesting, like just managing board dynamics. Everybody wants something different. They're not telling each other what they want. I'm only getting half the story of what they want, but they don't want that, so, managing through that while trying to set clarity for employees. That's all it was for the first 2 quarters.
God, one of the things I've learned since becoming a CEO is that I have a lot more empathy for CEOs. And I know that gets a lot of eye rolls because it's like, oh God, like, the founder who it's like, it's their vision, it's their dream, they're running the show. I think from the outside, it looks like a really sexy job. And then when you're in it, you're like, oh my God, not only do I have to find product market fit, figure out a way to scale the business, recruit employees to this mission, keep the people that are already here that I want here on the team. But then you still have people that you report to, which is the board. And to your point, all of them have different angles and things that they're looking for and things that they want. There's different levels of engagement. What did you learn as it relates to working for other CEOs potentially in the future? Is like, does it change your view now that you've had the seat?
A little bit, mainly because in some areas a little, in some areas more. Mainly because we've all known that it's a very lonely job. The best CEOs do not share their woes broadly. They hang on to them because they know that that's part of their responsibility. They do share, pains with their leadership team, so their leadership team can be a part of the solution, but their personal pain that they experience day to day is perceived as weakness if it's shared too broadly. So, they're always threading that line. So, but the people role is also quite lonely. We are all probably underestimating how powerful our ability to compartmentalize is. I'm in a group with a handful of other CEOs, and they're always looking at me like, how do you compartmentalize so well? this is my training. I mean, this is running a people function. I'm coaching this person and that person, helping that person, and like trying to get people to hold hands without telling them that I'm holding their hands together, like MacGyvering all of the things. But it's a different kind of lonely. And at least in the people role, you're kind of lonely to your peers and lonely to your team. Maybe you have one person you deeply trust, but hopefully your CEO is someone you can confide in, but you can't tell them all the dirt. So that's hard. But then the CEO role is like, it's lonely and it's heavy because all of these people look at you and they expect you to make it possible for them to make a paycheck, for them to feed their families, for them to do something fulfilling and have a positive impact. They look at you to make that possible for them. And I think anyone with a heart would feel that as weight and a super important responsibility.
So I know you're an optimist, so please forgive the question, but I bet my left ankle that some of the audience is like, was there ever a point where she didn't want to do this? Like, was there ever a point where you were like, listen, white flag? And if so, what was that like, and how did you work through that?
There was one time in late 2022, we were trying to build a plan for the future for the company, and many things were going well. But if you remember end of Q2, beginning of Q3 of 2022, the market fully fell out of itself. And LPs were pressuring VCs were pressuring portcos. And everybody was just looking at a fine-tooth comb, like, no longer can I wait for growth. I have to think the worst case scenario that you're never going to grow into that valuation. So I have to bail on whatever. Like, I get it. I totally understand. But I can remember exactly where I was because it was gross. I was in Las Vegas because it's, Nolan, you were just there, some parts are gross. But what was gross about it is I was in Vegas. I was at a healthcare convention. I was meeting with CEOs to try and with partners and with many people who had expressed interest in acquiring us. And I was building that value proposition to be acquired. And it felt like I was selling something, and it felt gross. It felt like I was dishonoring the people that were working their tails off with our patients and building our platform. And I was just like, what am I doing? I don't want to be doing this. I want to be building this. And I had a lot of sat in my hotel room, just heartbroken with all I want to do is keep building this. And previous circumstances are not going to let that happen. And I have to find the best possible way forward with as much integrity as my heart can hold. And I remember calling my husband and just saying, what the fuck am I doing? And then I got up the next morning, met with 4 more CEOs.
Did it again.
I just did it again, and that was a very hard night.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Real talk, most talent leaders haven't yet cracked how to leverage AI for meaningful impact on their hiring processes and business goals. But the leaders who are effectively using AI to transform their recruiting team's efficiency and quality use Metaview. Metaview is the AI assistant for the interview process. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. That means your people can focus on creating human connections with candidates during calls and save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate in every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Join forward-thinking talent leaders at high-performing organizations like Brex, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts, or get started for free. You'll be up running and AI-enabled in minutes.
This episode is brought to you by Warp. If you're a founder with employees in multiple states, you know managing state tax compliance is complicated. Warp not only automates state tax compliance, but also offers a user-friendly experience tailored to the needs of startups with a robust in-house team of experts. Warp ensures your startup remains compliant across all 50 states, giving you the peace of mind you need to focus on scaling your business. They also make it easy for startups to provide health benefits for employees, hire international contractors, and even claim R&D tax credits. Hundreds of startups trust Warp to handle their payroll and compliance needs. You can go from zero to payroll live in just 2 days. Don't let payroll and compliance hold your startup back. Visit joinwarp.com/peel or tap the link in the description. Get started and receive a $1,000 gift card when you run your very first payroll. That's joinwarp.com/peel.
So you sold the company. Walk us through just like that process, and then also walk us through the expectations that you had specifically from your board and then also from employees. Because people think, when you hear acquisition, it's usually like from the outside, it's like, oh, they sold the company. It's great. And it turns out like oftentimes it's not great when you sell a company. And so walk us through that whole process.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's really interesting about MindStrong is, and this came to play in the acquisition process, we were really two companies under one roof. We delivered clinical care to people who were mentally ill with a team of employees who were therapists, psychiatrists, and coaches, nurse practitioners, full clinical licensed team. That could be a business all by itself. Just deliver care. We delivered that care on a value-based contract, which is very hard to get in behavioral health. If you did any research, you would find that your best shot is primary care. I fully agree with that. Stick with primary care as value-based because they have more control. Very hard to attribute care outcomes specifically with behavioral, but we were doing it. Lots of interesting contracts. So we have revenue. We are growing revenue. By the time that first year, it was less than $1 million. By the time we were done, our ARR target was 16. Our ARR forecast was 16, not our target. We were targeting higher than that. That also failed me. You can ask me about that later. Like how realistic targets fail boards, fail CEOs and fail boards. Because I could have bullshitted my way through forecasts for probably another year and maybe lasted, but it would have been dishonest. And I just don't operate that way. And my board did not know how to engage with someone who was like, no, that's bullshit. I can't achieve that. I'm not going to tell you I can achieve that. Anyway, we'll come back to that. Anyway, so we've got this business that's a healthcare business. All the contracts are with that business. We get into those value-based arrangements because we have this fancy technology platform. So we have a whole nother business that is a technology platform. These two things are highly linked. They can't operate without each other. But nobody else is doing this. So when people come courting and say, ooh, I want what you have, they either go, oh, I want those value-based contracts, but I have no idea what to do with that technology because I'm a healthcare company and that's very scary to me. I don't know what to do with it. Or I want your technology because I already have a big provider group and I want to plug in that technology to make my providers better for their patients. But my contracts aren't value-based, so I don't want those contracts, which means I don't want that half of your business. And so while I drummed up 4 LOIs, which
Wow,
that was crazy, and during Christmas, during the month of December, they were all for different things. I want this part of the business. I want that part of the business. I don't want the whole business. I just want the technology. It was like they were not apples and oranges. There were a lot of board conversations trying to neutralize and compare these different offers to acquire the company. And we ultimately picked the very best one based on a whole series of levers that we pulled and yanked in all different directions. How can we get the most jobs locked in? How can we get the best value for the investors? Because remember, it's their money. I could get pissed off at them all day long for us having to go down this path, but it was their money that was fueling this. So to do right by them, we have to look for the right return. and the right chance to put the product to work. They've already integrated the product. It's already in front of 5,000 providers. We had 75. Like, I would say it was like very successful. The whole engineering team went, like, it was great. But getting to that point was really challenging because it's not like we were like, we have 5,000 cell phones, buy my 5,000 cell phones. It just wasn't simple.
Wow. And so the acquisition gets completed. What happens with you then?
So the acquisition was the technology and the technology team. So that whole platform, the company that acquired us has a different contract setup. And so the way that we incentivized providers under our contract did not match how they incentivized their providers. So it just didn't fit their business model. So I stayed on to wind down the healthcare part of the business because you have 75 providers with their license, i.e. livelihood, connected to that business. I'm not paying somebody 50 grand to do it wrong. I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to do it right to protect those people. So that's what I chose to do. And like, I'll be honest, it was hard to get letters in the mail sent to my home address that were like to a patient, and there's a mailbox, there's a post office stamp that says deceased on it. Like, whoo, lot of empathy, a lot of compassion for healthcare providers who had to go through that journey with us and had to, reconnect those patients with other providers and help them move on from something they really, really loved and got a lot of benefit from. But it was the only way forward.
Wow. Okay. So you complete that, right? Let's go back. You're a trained people leader. Now You've had a CEO experience. What does that mean for the rest of your career? And how are you thinking about what's next?
Good question. It's been an interesting journey. I wrapped in September and I thought, okay, I have a goal. I'm going to try to get bored for a quarter. I failed miserably. I'm really no good at getting bored. So I did, all sorts of things, tinkering around the house and remodeled a bathroom with myself. I'm really good at rough-in plumbing now. So if anybody needs a plumber, just give me a shout.
Really good at YouTube.
Yeah. YouTube is your friend when it comes to home improvements. And then I set out to figure out, like, okay, I was sort of imagining like the wheel of a slot machine where you have, the cherries and the dice and the stars and all the things. And it could land a lot of different ways. And each wheel one was a function, one was a company, one was the mission, one was the team. Like, okay, so a lot of different combinations could work for me. Let's see if I can start saying no to some things. And so I ruled out going back into a chief people officer role. I tested that theory a couple times. I put myself in an interview process and I was like, I was already bored. No disrespect to CPOs out there. I was just personally already bored with running that play again, tweaking it, run again, tweak it. Like, I needed something different. And so fortunately, I had a CEO that I met with who said to me, you would be wasted on this job. Please don't take another CPO job. And that was so powerful coming from a CEO after hearing a venture talent lead say, you're never going to get another CEO job. You come from HR. And so that was a stinger of like, oh, definitely not in your portfolio. But to hear that CEO give me that feedback was very kind. He did not have to say that to me. He had no reason to say that to me. He could have just tried to recruit me, But I ruled that out. And just in the last couple of months, I've started looking at CEO opportunities quite carefully. Because look, I know it's going to be a shit show wherever I go next. Because you know what? Everywhere's a shit show behind the curtain. And that's okay. I'm not bothered by that. I just want to know what I'm walking into. And I do think it's going to be very, very hard for me to overcome my history because I think people have their own preconceived notions about what HR does.
We're all pattern matchers at the end of the day, unfortunately. And I think that's most true in recruiting.
It's true. Can I tell you a story?
Love it.
Please.
So while I'm grateful to the CEO that said, go back and be another CEO, there have been other CEOs I've talked to who won't say it to me, but they go back to the exec recruiter and say, she just wants my job.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, so okay, got it. So they actually think that you're taking the CPO job to ultimately replace them.
Yeah.
She's going to be better than me coming in as the CPO.
And I just don't, I wouldn't
interesting
want to work
angle.
for someone that was in that position, because I would hope they could see me as earnest. But that was most surprising, just to hear, like, wait, what? Man, if that's the headspace you're in, maybe we should talk in a coaching relationship, because I'd love to get you out of that headspace, but you don't have to hire me, because I don't want to work with someone that's on their heels like that. I don't ever want to feel like I put somebody in a position where they feel threatened. That would suck. That would suck for everyone.
That would suck.
Yeah. But I Kelli, when we talked to like a month ago, I was deep in this, like, holy crap, I feel like I don't have a home. I don't really want to be a CPO. I got this CEO who said he doesn't want me to be a CPO because he's afraid I'm going to take his job. I got this other CEO who's brilliant, and I really admire the business he's built, but he's telling me, go be a CEO somewhere. And then I got this talent lead at a very, very well-run venture capital firm saying, you're never going to get another CEO job. I'm like, so maybe those rough and plumbing skills are going to come in handy after all.
I was going to say, you could always, go be a plumber or the trade. And isn't it interesting that we do these big things sometimes? You overcame this huge challenge. You succeeded in that by all respects. And it created more issues and your life's more complicated. I'm sure it will all work out for the best and you're going to crush. But that moment, it's so interesting how those things happen.
You just want to put people into a box, though.
Yeah.
It's so much easier when it's clean, when it's like, oh, you've come up through go-to-market, like you're going to be a CRO.
Yeah.
That's just a much cleaner path, because ultimately when you're hiring at the executive level, regardless of the job, one of the things you're thinking about is de-risking.
Yeah.
And like the risk feels higher if the person's path is not traditional.
Yeah.
And that's probably what you're experiencing right now in the market, is like, okay, this path is cool. It's an awesome fucking story. But, in my company, I don't know, because like there's other people who have solved this exact problem in our box before. And I think that's the problem, I think, with recruiting, is like we are pattern matchers and we just want to keep people in their box.
Yeah.
And when you step outside the box, the risk goes up and we say, probably not worth the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that changing. Michelle, we talked about this when you were over. I mean, people are changing careers. They're changing careers. They're doing different things now. They're saying, I'm not going to be doing this for 30 years like my mom or, grandma, generations before.
Yeah.
They're switching around. There's business leaders coming into HR and vice versa. So, I don't want to be trite and say get used to it, but I think you're going to see more and more of this over the coming years.
I fully agree with you. I had a conversation with an investor recently who is working on a CEO role in one of his portfolio companies. The conversation started with, I just want to start by saying, I'm a believer that great CPOs can be CEOs. And I was like, holy shit, I love this already. Like, okay, I don't have a crazy hill to battle. Let's go. We had an incredible conversation. Never once did we talk about HR. Never once in the whole hour that we were together did we talk about HR stuff. We talked about go-to-market. We talked about strategy. We talked about board management. We talked about stabilization and executives and how to assess people and how to bring a team together. So it's a little HR, but a lot of leadership, right? 55 minutes into the call, he says to me, okay, cool. So you spike on the people stuff. Where else do you spike? And I'm like, would you ask that question of a CRO or a CFO? No, because they spike in their function and that's enough. But the people function isn't enough of a spike. And I don't think he meant it the way it came off, but man, I was just like, balloon deflated.
Do you think the reason why though is because the people skill is expected in addition to the other skill that of the function that you own? So for example, if it's a CRO, you're expected to know go to market really well, but you're all in addition to that, you're expected to build the team, prune the team, invest in the team, grow the team. It's definitely tough feedback to hear, but that's actually, I've thought about this for myself a lot, is I've had to go learn go to market. I've had to go learn product. And the learning curve in those areas is fucking massive. And so, I hear it. It's definitely tough feedback, but like, I think that's part of the reason why, right? It's like all of the other leaders are expected to do people stuff in addition to their core function.
They're expected to be leaders and managers. And I think that's true. So I would love to explore this because I think that's a really interesting take on that. Like I expect you to be a leader, but when you say like, okay, people as a function, you spike there. People as a function is not purely leadership or managing people. There's a lot of other stuff that happens behind the scenes. And by the way, in a software company, 70% of your spend is on employees. That's your asset. So like, who do you expect to take care of that? Anywho, but like, there's a lot more technical stuff that happens behind the scenes in HR, in a people function that we didn't even get into. So it was just surprising to me that he needed me to have a full spike in another function. And he laid it out that way. Is it product? Is it go to market? Is it sales?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's wherever the fire is, my friend. That's what I go towards.
You know what? I'm not surprised at that at all. And we've talked about it in other episodes that it's fucking unfair. Like, yes, this job can be unfair because these CEOs, founders, they're all the technical stuff you mentioned, Michelle, that is very real and it's a very big fucking job. They don't know. They're not aware. That is why we don't take all that shit into one-on-ones and this and that. And I used to say to Todd, I'm like, listen, you don't even want to know about this iceberg that's under the water of what's happening here. Like, you don't want to know, but it's taking like 60% of my time this week, and it's very necessary. Like, they're not aware of these things, but they know marketing, they know product, they know go to market enough to know what a spike feels like. It's an awareness issue, and we've talked about it. It is unfair, but unfortunately, it's the reality. We have to be good at table stakes. We have to be good at leadership. We have to know how the business works. We have to know the levers of that. You got to know all of it. And I don't know if that will change. Now, what's not going to work is getting CEOs on board and wanting to hear about the functional spike and all the lovely fun we all have in this role. But if you have a good relationship with them, you can get them aware enough where they're like, okay, I got it. Like, this is a spike. And sometimes they get a taste of it because they get pulled into some nasty shit and they're like, Jesus, I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, never mind. Take it back. I don't want it anymore.
I take it back. Like, I get amped up on this because we've talked about this. And it's not good enough for CPOs to say, I'm out because you don't get it. You've got to work with it.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. You know?
I think the take is from specifically like the board who would be hiring you is, those are just like the you said it earlier, right? Every company's a shit show. And that's like the underneath the surface of that's the shit show of the company. At the end of the day, they think, I'm not saying this is true, but I think they think it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is, do we have an amazing go-to-market motion? Do we have an amazing product? And do we have, customers that are obsessed with our product? And all the other stuff, they're like, we'll figure it out, and I think that's the general take of the board when they're hiring is they're not optimized for a company that's running smoothly. They're optimized for revenue and products that will drive massive revenue.
Unfortunately, those things are correlated.
I agree with you, Nolan, because when a company's doing well, it doesn't matter how much of a shit show it is.
Exactly.
It just doesn't matter. And if a company's not doing well, it suddenly matters. But my take would be, imagine that company that's doing well and wasn't running like a shit show. I bet it would sustain that growth for a hell of a lot longer. I bet it would be a leader in its market space a heck of a lot longer, and could fend off competitors and make their customers really happy if it were well run. And I don't mean perfectly run. I just mean not a complete shit show behind
Totally.
it.
The art of what is possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yep. I love that. Katie, what else you got?
I got nothing else. This has been awesome. I can't wait for this one. We should accelerate it.
Well, I mean,
It's
it
great.
only took a while. I want to tell you guys this story really quick, and then you can decide what you want to do
Please.
with it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so remember how I told you that one of the first things we did was reset our values? Part of that was resetting our mission, resetting KPIs, talking about how we were going to measure our success, all the business strategy. We released it all at the same time to employees at the end of Q1 of my first quarter in. And we did a lot. We did a lot of stuff to repeat it, make it real, like live our values all the time. And not in a hokey way, in like core business decisions. Like when we made an error on a customer's billing, one of our values was lead with integrity. Well, of course, we're going to refund them and tell them all of the details about what went wrong and how we're going to fix it. Find your value. But probably towards the end of my first year, I had a little moment, and I was talking to AJ, my head of people, and I was sort of like, fuck, I think I spent too much time on values and culture and not enough time on business strategy. Like, I don't know if I got this priority right. And she, thank goodness, was like, woman, knock yourself straight. She's like, wrong. You have, like, stay the course. You chose correctly. The business strategy is coming together. Look at the contracts we're signing. People are doing it because they know what we're supposed to do. They're doing it because of the culture and the strategy that you set up for the KPIs that told them how they were going to be measured and how they would make decisions. All of you, like, stop it. Stop doubting yourself. Thank God I had her. So then fast forward another year and a half, we're in the midst of this acquisition situation. And keep in mind, 2 businesses, all these patients we got to take care of. We got to sell this platform. I can't sell the platform with 10,000 patients on it and just turn off the patients. Legally, I have to give them 60 days notice and help them find another provider. But how am I going to do that after the deal's closed and I sell the platform? They're not going to lease it back to me. And then I got to keep all those providers, and that's going to cost money. And like, it was never going to work. So it was like, all right, I never second guessed this until someone told me I was ridiculously crazy for doing this. As soon as we signed the LOI, we had an all hands meeting, and I told our employees, we're being acquired. The deal's going to close in roughly 60 days. I have no idea if all of you will have job offers through this acquisition. I hope to know by this date. What I do know is we have to start releasing patients. We've built a plan. We're going to meet as a company every single week, and we're going to take you through row by row, team by team, what your priority is for this week. And I need you myopically focused on this week alone. You're going to get inquiries from outside. We can't talk about this with anyone. I can't even tell you the name.
Yep.
And we have to do what's right by our members. Our very first value was members first. And in order to do right by them, I have to do right by you as our employees. And that is my focus. And 71 days later, we closed the transaction. A reporter we had done a whole bunch of things that made us file some stuff. We filed WARN for our providers just in case they all didn't get jobs. So of course, there's those asshole reporters that go poking around in those filings. They emailed every damn employee multiple times through LinkedIn, direct text messages. The phishing was absurd. Not one employee broke. Not one employee talked to anyone. It never got out. And all of those employees were treated with respect and got to carry on, and we helped them find new things if they didn't move on to the acquirer. And that's a testament to our culture and our values. So anytime a CEO says, this is bullshit, I don't want to spend time on it, I tell them it matters the most when you need it the most. And you can't build it in that moment. It has to be foundational. So I'm forever.
That's a testament to transparency.
It really is. And I'm forever grateful to my entire executive team for living our values through that. Like, there's no way in hell I could have done that alone. And there's definitely no way I could have done it without my head of people to keep me staying focused. And then when we put it to work in the end, it was just like, it was very powerful.
That is a great story. I've said many times on this show, like the culture, how you run a company, the dynamic, the communication, the transparency, it impacts your P&L more than you will ever know. And often it's invisible. Like, it just happens. And you're like, what just happened, in good and bad ways? And this was a great way. That's awesome.
There's no way we could have like handled the whole thing without it. Zero chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you play it out and you're opaque around what's going on, what humans always do is they create a story in their head and they fill in the gaps with the worst possible thing for them. That's what they always do.
100%.
And so, but it's got to be incredibly uncomfortable for you in that moment to be like, all right, I'm just going to be real with people that I don't know. But when you're real with people that you don't know, they're not left wondering. They now trust you more because you're just being straightforward and you're putting everything on the table.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you have the answer or not. It matters if they believe you.
Yeah. And that you're telling them. I mean, thankfully I had 2.5 years under my belt with this group of people, and I had, flown everybody to one place a year earlier, and we really deeply connected as humans. And that I had that trust because I gave it to them first, and they knew that. And this was just one more time where I was giving them information that many of them knew, like, holy shit, she didn't have to tell us this. My friend just got surprised. He just got let go yesterday because his company was acquired and he never knew it was happening. And so I appreciate that our employees did what was right all the way through that.
That's
every
awesome.
single one of
Not
them.
one person.
Every single one of them just like stood with such integrity and took care of our patients, took care of the platform, and they're doing it inside the acquirer still to this day. And so much pride in that experience.
Well, we're going to use the story. So Nat's not letting that one go.
It's so powerful, Michelle. Like that's, I really hope people listen to that story, because in the moment when you're deciding, should I tell the company this? The default honestly should be yes. Like it should be the default. As somebody who is like, actually, I've 180'd on this as my career has gone on, because I grew up at Google to where you didn't learn shit.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know anything about what was going on. And it's just like, things are working. So like, okay. To then, especially at a smaller company to where it's tighter knit, people know things, people start, chirping, at the water cooler. It's whenever there's stuff like that, the lesson for me is just default to transparent, because at the very least, you're putting your cards on the table and staying true to who you want to be. And that typically gets reciprocated by others.
This has been fun as always.
Yeah. We didn't even have to drink vodka this time.
We will next time.
Speak for yourself.
You are an hour later
from Las Vegas.
He's an hour. I appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to both of you very soon.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.